Assuming if it comes in tomorrow, which sounded like it would it would come to the commission on.
I'd like to call to order the meeting of the Planning Commission, Salina Planning Commission for January 20th, 2015, and ask Commissioner Sweeney to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I would also like to welcome Commissioner Sweeney to her first Planning Commission meeting. Welcome.
Thank you.
If we could also have roll call.
Commissioner Sweeney,
Here.
Kistner,
Here.
Heil,
Present.
Monette,
Here.
Chairperson Parker.
Present. I'd like to move on to the approval of the minutes. We have the minutes from September 30th, October 7th, and October 21st. Does anyone have any comments, revisions? If I could have a
It was
motion.
nice to see them. Yeah.
I move that we approve the minutes of September 30th and October the 12th. I have to recuse myself from the other ones. I make that motion.
Second.
I guess I move to approve the minutes for October 7th, just to have all-encompassing.
Second.
Okay.
I have two motions.
If we could have a roll call.
Okay. Commissioner Sweeney,
Yes.
Heil,
Yes.
Chairperson Parker.
Yes.
Commissioner Kistner,
Yes.
Monette.
Yes.
All
Yeah.
right. I'd like to move on to public forum. This is an opportunity for the public to address the commission on items of interest that to the public that are not listed on the agenda. Because of restrictions imposed by the Brown Act, the commission may not engage in discussions nor take action on matters not described on the agenda. Would anyone like to speak at public forum? If you could please state your name and your address for the record. Thank you.
Thank you. Jeff Ellsworth. I live on Sylvaner Avenue, 1434. Last week I read something at the city council meeting about zoning, about some zoning problems that were happening in Missouri with people repurposing zoning. Zoning, so I want to just talk a little bit about zoning. I was researching zoning. The history of zoning kind of goes back to the 20s, and the idea is it protects the equity of the homeowners. It creates a stability in an area. Say people have homes and all of a sudden a laundromat wants to move in, and it might degrade their equity. So the zoning protects that. It's kind of an insurance policy. So I read this thing last week, and I apologize if I'm a little scattered. But so when the small winery ordinance came out last year, we realized that it would, in a sense, it wouldn't change the title of the zoning, but it would change the purpose of the zoning. And it's easier to do that because you don't have to go through all the process of changing zoning. You just change a purpose within it. And when we read it, it would change our ag parcels into the possibility of them becoming tourist commercial with the Party Palace Event Center, heavy marketing and visitation. We realized there was very little study done on the impact to the citizens or to our equity. What might happen to our equity if those were to go in. Recently, there was a project approved down here, the Davies Project. I also believe it's a zoning issue, that it's changing the purpose of zoning, certain zoning, without the proper studies to how it affects the community's equity. It's changing zoning. I think you're supposed to vote on that. The community should have a vote. I think 6 to 8 people made a choice for the community. And I'm a nice guy. And it bothers me. So some people, I don't think, when they understand that these questions of zoning need to be given to the public to make the choice rather than a small body. Anyway, like I said, I'm pretty scattered, but it's a zoning issue. We're looking into it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ellsworth. Would anyone else like to speak at public forum?
I'm Kiki First. I have a store at 1309 Main Street, and also I live in Sant'Elina. And after being on the main street and on Adams for almost over 4 years, I just came back from vacation and I found out there is a new jewelry store in town. A new jewelry store that, I don't know, for as far as we know, was not supposed to be there in a location where was a consignment store before. So I'm very concerned because, we talked many times last year. I was present at all the meeting, all the discussion when we had, the Romance Santerina issue and things about the redundancy. And now having Santerina become another town where is all jewelry store and art gallery. I come back after I closed my store for the first time after being open 7 days a week and giving a service to this town. I close the store and I come back and there is a new jewelry store where a consignment, clothing, shoes and accessory store used to be. So I'm very concerned that either somebody didn't do their work in approving the permit or moving the permit, but it's certainly not fair when somebody like me that comes new into town 6 years ago, apply for the permit the first time, reapply for the second term, for a new permit when I move not even a block and follow all the rules and regulation. And, don't be fooled. We're talking about, I have nothing to do, with Mr. Dahlia. I don't even know who he is. I know he had a store on the Santerina Plaza, which is farther down. But it's a store that at least for 3 months, if not 6 or 8, had a big sign outside saying, going out of business. Sale. So he wasn't going out of business. He was moving. I just wish somebody would pay attention to this. It's a beautiful town. It's a gorgeous location in Napa Valley. People come here from all over the world to see diversity, to see something unique. And the best thing is for everybody to play a fair game. Otherwise, it's not going to work. It's not going to work for anybody. I just want to give you my thoughts, and you work with it. It's just really unfair what happened.
Thank you. Would staff like to make a comment to that?
Sure. I appreciate the comments and the concern. Let me explain from a staff standpoint. It wasn't like the issue was not looked at by staff. It was. And what staff did was we became aware that the gentleman was moving from one location to the other. We looked at the use permits that were approved at both locations, both the existing location where he was and the location where he was going to. In both locations, the one he was in, jewelry was an accessory use. The one he was going to, the use permit indicated jewelry was an accessory use. The nature of the stores or the use permit description was slightly different in terms of clothing versus whatever, but the store that was moving also indicated they had clothing. In any case, use permits are distinguishing between what's permitted and not permitted, and a number of the only triggering use permit requirement was the jewelry component, and it was identical or similar in both locations. Given that it was somebody that was already in town, and given the similarity of the use permits, staff made a judgment call to indicate that they could move from one location to the other without triggering a new use permit. And partly what we considered is, what is the discretion if we did do a new one in terms of what would be before the commission? I mean, you'd be looking at one type of clothing versus another type of clothing. That's typically not the kinds of issues that come up in a use permit. What we found out after the fact, the reality was that the situation was somewhat misrepresented to staff in terms of the jewelry operation at the existing location. The use permit for that location was very specific and indicated that the jewelry component could only be 30%. Evidently, it exceeded that. I'm not sure by exactly how much. And from a staff standpoint, that's something physically we could have gone out there and double checked and verified what they had indicated to us in the letter, but just we have a number of things going on, and we just essentially had to go by or went by what was submitted to us. When they moved into the new location, if anything, the amount of jewelry as part of the business appears to have even increased over what it was at the previous location. So the reality is the business that was moving appeared to be exceeding their use permit at their previous location. When they moved, they further exceeded it, both because they were at the previous location and they appeared to have added jewelry to it. So we met with the applicant or the moving store owner, and indicated to him that the business was not a clothing/accessories store with jewelries being a secondary use. It was a full-on jewelry store. So out of that discussion, the applicant agreed to, if they want to continue the business as it is currently, they are going to need a use permit given what the use is in actuality versus what we thought it was. And we met with them today. They verbally indicated to us that they were going to get in a use permit application tomorrow to the city for the jewelry store, and they were going to describe thoroughly what's being proposed and what they're going to do and not do. Assuming that comes in tomorrow, at least in the next few days, we should be able to schedule that to the Planning Commission on February 17th. So, sorry, it's a little bit of a long story, but the fact is there was a process behind it. I think the shortcoming from a staff standpoint was we should have been out and looked at the site to verify what was going on out there. And then on the other hand, I think the person moving was a little disingenuous if you had seen the information they submitted to us in terms of what they were intending to do. So I think we have a solution to it. There will be a public hearing then in front of the Planning Commission, and any and all can voice their concerns on the 17th.
Thank you, Victor. I would like to add that we send notification to the jewelry store owners that have sent the letters to the city just to make sure that they're fully aware of the date and time of the public hearing. Would anyone else like to speak at public forum? Okay, moving on to communications and petitions. We do have some, but they're associated with items that are on the agenda, so we'll bring them up then. Scheduled matters, we have none. Consent calendar, none. Sign permit and administrative determination, none. And that moves us into our public hearing, 9.1. This has an item that was continued from our October 7th and December 2nd hearings. It's PL 14-043, design review at 1269 Allen Avenue. And if we could get a staff report.
Absolutely. As noted in the staff report, this project has been heard by the Commission in various forms before. At the December 2nd, 2014 meeting, the Commission directed the applicant to revise the plans in order to reduce the massing and better integrate the addition with the original brick home. The applicant has submitted revised plans that include the following: an approximate 250 square foot reduction in size from 2,347 square feet to 2,098 square feet. The second story has been set back from the neighbor to the north to address privacy issues. The roof has been modified to match the roof of the existing home. A stone base has been added to create continuity and consistency with the stone base of the existing home. The vertical siding has been changed to horizontal siding. The color has been changed to an earth tone in order to better blend with the existing structure and surroundings. The windows have been changed to double hung windows to complement the double hung windows on the existing home. And the overall height has been reduced by 1 feet 9 inches from about 25 feet to 23 feet 3 inches. Both the new and previous renderings have been included in the staff report for comparison. Staff feels that the changes described in the staff report are a significant improvement to the plan previously submitted. The Commission needs to determine whether the revised plans allow the Commission to make the required design review findings. In the event that such findings can be made, a resolution of approval has been included with the staff report. I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have at this time.
Thank you, Aaron. Does anyone have any questions for staff at this time?
Yes, Aaron, is the 2098 including an exemption for the existing rear garage, or is that not included in the calculations?
No.
There's no actual in-use garage. I mean, there's an old barn at the
Right,
rear of
and
the
I,
parcel.
for the exemption to take place, I think you'd have to be able to park a car in there.
Okay, thank you.
And the pool, I'm assuming, is not counted in
It is
any
not.
case.
It is not.
All right. I'd like to,
Sorry, one more question for clarification. I
Yep.
believe the applicant has already applied for and gotten a pool permit,
I believe that is
Isn't
the
that
case.
correct?
Yeah.
and so that's not before us essentially with this
It's
application.
permitted by right.
It's permitted. Okay, thank you.
And I had a question too. One of the neighboring issue or the neighbors' issues was the total height of the project, and it goes back and forth. There's some discrepancies. But just to confirm, this will be 3 feet higher than the existing historical building
That's
total
correct.
height.
That's
correct.
correct.
With the second story.
Correct.
And then the other question, there were some discrepancies in the plans about setbacks. But to confirm, it does indeed have a 10-foot setback
On
and then
both
5
on both sides.
on both sides.
Yep.
Okay. And 5 on the pool,
Yep.
according to Clark. Okay.
does anyone else have any questions for staff? With that, I'd like to open up public comment and invite the applicant to come up if he'd like to first, or you can save it.
Hi, my name's Rob Fisher. I'm 1279 Allen Avenue. I just wanted to ask 2 questions. In running into a handful of neighbors, they were surprised not to be renoticed. I think this was noticed quite a long time ago when the original item came up 3 or 4 hearings ago. And I just wondered what triggers a new notice, given there have been substantial changes from the beginning. And it's also been hard for people to understand what's been going on because there's no record of the notes from the last hearing. It was also not televised, and so it's hard for anybody to understand what took place at the last meeting, and I've heard some current concerns about that. So I just wondered if you could address those 2 and let us know if it would be noticed or what would trigger a notice in the future. All the other concerns that I documented in an email, I presume, are part of the record that I've sent to you all.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Thank you.
For noticing, Aaron?
Typically, if the item was continued to a specific date, we're not required to notice it. If it's continued to an indefinite point in time, it's renoticed. This was renoticed, so I'm not sure what happened. Maybe we missed a couple people. I'm not sure.
Okay.
May I make a comment,
Yes,
Sarah?
of course.
I also have a problem in the fact that I went back and tried to replay the December 2nd. I can't hear it. I mean, I can see all of our mouths going, but I don't understand what we're saying. So,
And I think that has a lot to do with we were having some technical
yeah,
difficulties that the high school has
again,
improved upon.
You know, I really sympathize with what Mr. Fisher's saying when they can't follow what's going on. I couldn't follow it. I called several people to see if they could do it. I thought maybe it was me. It wasn't me. So I don't know. Maybe we should notice it again and go back. I'd like to know what we did on the second, if you want me to be honest with you.
Okay.
I think Mr. Fisher's indicated we did some things at the second I'd like to verify.
Well, I'd first like to apologize that you weren't able to hear. We definitely, according to Cindy, we've improved the technology to be able to, one, not have microphone feedback, and also for viewers at home to be able to access it on the internet. So you're saying you want to renotice and have this push?
I think that would only be fair.
That's not going to solve our issue with December 2nd.
Yeah,
That's the only problem I see.
But if the public has no way of knowing what happened, they have no way of making an informed, contribution.
I just wanted to, I was here and heard what happened, but I think people I've run into and neighbors who weren't noticed just wanted to read the minutes. So if anyone could transcribe that, I think the minutes have been fairly delayed today. I think you approved several hearings, and So people are just asking me that question.
Well, I will say I do think, a little props to Jesse in the audience right now. He did do a pretty decent article for what happened at that meeting. And I think basically just to recap it, we went over saying it was a little bit too big. We asked him to scale down. We thought there was too much massing on, I believe, your property line. And there was concern over the pool, and there was a concern over that it looked like two separate buildings. And we asked him to come back with those concerns. We also went over most of the design review numbers, and most of them really were not in compliance with what the house wasn't in compliance with the design review qualifications. And we asked him to go back and address those because we just didn't feel it fit in with the neighborhood.
So,
And-
to the point is just that I think there are people in the public that would like to know that, and they've just heard it from you if they're going to watch this
Yeah.
or watch a recording, but they haven't been able to contribute to tonight's hearing. So,
Just also to clarify, in terms of minutes, and this has been approved by council as part of the policy for the planning commission, the minutes rely on the recordings, for better or for worse. So that the actual minutes we do really are not minutes in the true sense of looking at everything that, or putting down everything that was said, spoken, the whole thing. They're really just action minutes. So unfortunately, and I don't think there really is anything we can do, we cannot reconstruct that meeting. I think as you summarized, what did occur at the meeting, and as Aaron did indicate, we did do a renoticing. Sometimes when you do the 300-foot radius, folks think they're within 300 feet and they're not. In any case, it's not unusual for that to come up, but we have done a couple of noticings out there, and obviously if people want to have input into what's going on with this house, it's they obviously can attend the meeting and listen to the discussion. So, but the main point I'm making really is that unfortunately we're probably not going to have anything resembling minutes that memorialize the whole discussion, et cetera, if it's not possible to decipher from the I guess what amounts to a silent movie or whatever it was at the December 2nd commission meeting.
For clarification, though, didn't Cindy a few moments ago say that city does have it, they have to reload it, that they are aware there's some problems? I thought that she mentioned that to us at the beginning of the meeting.
I still think that's
I would
not going to help
clarify.
the problem that's at hand. There's people that are at home that don't know what happened at that meeting and would like to know, and now we're here, and it's that uncomfortable position where do we continue it again? We've had this now for 2-3 months, and I'd love to.
can I just add two other things?
Of course.
Just part of the relevance that happened December 2nd that I thought was helpful for the applicant is just that commissioners described that they didn't envision approving a building that would be 2 stories. That doesn't seem to be part of the new plan. I think that would remedy a lot of our concerns, and just wanted to make that part of the record. But also, I appreciated that staff has reached out to us. We were aware this was coming up tonight. I just know of 2 adjacent neighbors to the applicant that didn't receive notices. So I think it was more than one. But okay.
And I apologize to them for not receiving the notification. We can look into that. I'm kind of thinking, do we want to continue with public comment? Do we want to close it to decide what we want to do with this and then reopen public comment just to have a little staff discussion? Or
I mean, once again, I don't believe, I guess there's Cindy. First of all, Cindy could clarify the point as to whether we're going to, if there is a technical fix to the December 2nd minutes, or whether they're going to depend on a lip reader or some other mechanism.
Cindy looks happy.
No, we did suffer technical difficulties. However, we did have a staff member that videoed the meeting and captured the all the action on her iPhone. So it's just taking that file, converting it, and being able to put it on the website. So, but there's just so many issues with the technical difficulties that we have sustained that it's on the burner, but it's a matter of time that we can get it up. So,
Okay.
but it's important.
Commissioners, staff, good evening. I would just like to say, the last meeting, is kind of out of our hands, took in the feedback, and I think tonight is looking at the merits of the design we're presenting tonight, and which you said was sent out to neighbors. So hopefully we can look at what was being presented tonight and the merits of that, since we're, threw away the design of the last meeting, took feedback from, you guys are nice enough to be able to meet with you and get some feedback from staff. So, I think it would be great to get a vote on the merits of tonight's presentation, as opposed to, a month ago. So.
Is there anyone that's wholly against going over the application as we have in front of us?
Well, that was a very good point. I mean, what I'm hearing you say is that irrespective of what was said last meeting, it's a new show tonight. I mean, I think that's what you're saying. And, but I also am really aware of a very high consciousness in the community that people want maximum
Input
and the opportunity to do that. So it's difficult. I can really feel both sides of this issue. I know that people who are wanting the project want to get on with it, but I think it's really important for us to respect the desire and often expressed desire of the community to have full participation in these decisions.
I would just have to say, if that's permanently lost, that'd be indefinite period of time. Then, if last meeting is forever lost, then I'm not quite sure how that would work.
May I make a comment?
Yes.
If in fact we're going to look at this, I would like to see renderings that show the new colors of the new and the new roof compositions and the materials. I'm still seeing the gray and the vertical batten. I'm not seeing what you're telling me in the narrative of what you're going to do with it.
Yeah, it's.
Would you show me? I can't find it. I can see the gray.
It's a lighter.
That's gray.
Sandy gray.
No,
The other one
he's
was.
indicating it's in terracotta.
Excuse me, is the television able to project at this point any images of the renderings that we're seeing?
No.
It's not.
It's still indicating a corrugated roof also.
That's incorrect. It is not a corrugated.
I understand that.
Oh, okay.
The verbiage tells me that. The pictures don't show that. At least I don't see any in the pictures.
In terms of, I don't know, maybe kind of getting a reset here, what the commission can, I mean, one approach simply is we're here tonight. Obviously, I don't think anybody wants to be in a position where something goes up on appeal to council, particularly if with the sense of feeling there wasn't time or adequate outreach or input. So one approach would be, and I know the applicant has been very patient to date, but has been indicated, it's really important to to fit in and have all comments addressed. So one approach simply is for the commission to hold a hearing tonight, provide more feedback to the applicant, and then if the commission's willing, we can simply renotice the item to the neighborhood and bring it back at the next meeting, and in which case the applicant can respond to whatever the comments are. If it turns out there's not a lot of, if commission's happy with what's being proposed or doesn't have comments or questions, then obviously the commission can act tonight if they would like. But given the context, I want to avoid a scenario where there is that sense that there was an adequate consideration at the commission level and we end up on an appeal. I think we need to be as thorough as we can. So
I'm of a like mind of that. I don't want this to turn into a Stockton Street situation where we continue that project. I would like to go over the merits of the project as we see it today. And if we decide to approve tonight, then that's great. If we decide to continue it, it would be to the next meeting, which would be in 2 weeks.
2 weeks.
And I think that's what I would like for this commission to do, just because we are here. It was noticed, and it was in the paper, and it was probably noticed by Cindy. And I think that just to not waste your time tonight, we might as well go over what we have in front of us, because it is, I do agree with you, it is different than what was in front of us on December 2nd. December 2nd was really that first draft, and this is the draft with our recommendations in it, which I think is more important for the neighbors at home. It doesn't matter. It matters now tonight on, do we agree that he did what we asked him to do at that December 2nd meeting?
And I'm not sure I could show you the page, but we did go to horizontal siding, which was feedback we received.
It is. It's horizontal on these little baby pictures.
And
Yeah.
Yeah,
you know,
I see
if
that,
it,
but you didn't do it in the terracotta, did you? See, I think that's going to disappear when you do a terracotta. I'm not against your project. That's not my problem. I just think that we need to satisfy everybody. And I think we would be much more satisfied if we could actually see what really is the truth in going on.
yeah, there's no
I have no problem.
terracotta.
But he doesn't say terracotta. He says an earth tone to better blend in. Yeah.
And there's paint colors on the elevations that say the exact paint color, and it's color matched. And if this goes to appeal, we'll go from there. If we wait
That's
till
all right.
the next
and that
meeting,
also
it
was
could
my
have
next
another.
question. That's your risk to take.
Yeah.
And so, okay. So
It could happen in the future. It could happen 2 months from now.
would you like to go over the changes that you've made, or would you? They're quite significant, and I just for full disclosure, I did meet with the applicant to go over the property.
I do too.
And I would love to have you put your input on what the changes that you've made, and just kind of go over
Yeah,
that
sure.
if you're okay with that.
Yeah, I think one of the more significant things we did was the FAR, the floor area ratio, which we reduced from 34% to 30%. I think that was one of the bigger items of concern in the last meeting. Another thing was to make sure that the new design complements the vernacular of the historic portion. So we made, to better tie that in and complement, we did a gable roof. The gable roof was changed to a hip roof to match the roof style of the existing structure. So we had the roof line flows and matches. The stone base on the existing historic portion was continued to the new addition, so we can get some continuity there and consistency between the two. And then we went to vertical siding as opposed to horizontal.
Or you went to horizontal, not vertical.
Correct. Which was something we received on a lot of our feedback. And then on the colors, we went to an earth tone color, specifically should be on your elevations, has the paint colors specified.
We might not have the colors.
Yeah, would you like me to go over this?
I have the colors of the house.
Oh, okay. And then the windows, we were changed to double hung windows to complement the existing windows on the historic portion.
Does anyone have any questions for the applicant?
Did you consider going to one story on the addition? And what did that look like? And, can you run us through why you stayed with 2, for instance?
Yeah, we did consider it when you come to the height and getting, going from the historic to the addition and making sure that roof line doesn't look, odd. It looks pretty much the same with a second story as it does with a first story. We're just 3 feet higher than the existing ridge line, and it allows for a 2-bedroom as opposed to a 1-bedroom. So if we went to a 1-story, you still have that raised half floor that the historic building has, which you have pretty much the same side view as if you had a 2-story. So we felt that the 3 feet that we added above the existing ridge line would be fine.
Can I ask about gutters and drainage? I know that's been an issue that's been a repeated request of the neighbor, and it doesn't look like that's been addressed in any way on the drawings or on the plans. And we just want to see if that can be tied into some permanent commitment.
Yes, yeah. The gutters and downspouts should be on the roof plan, the planning, but that would be something that would be definitely be part of the building plan review.
I'm looking to see, is that part of the Public Works conditions?
It is.
Yeah.
I think.
Just trying to find
Yeah,
it.
they require
I think I saw it.
thorough.
Just trying to get the number
Runoff.
for
Yeah,
Commissioner Sweeney.
They're just general. It talks about not having additional drainage, but it's not tied as a specific condition.
It's Public Works Condition 5.
All right, I do see that Mr. Fisher would like to possibly speak again, which I will allow if you don't mind. If it seems like the commission doesn't have any further questions for the applicant at this time. No, there's a.
All right, thank you.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
I think I addressed this in my email, but I did just want to ask, maybe the applicant could clarify. It seems to me like, although the peak of the roof has come down, the side walls in total height are now higher than they were. And so visually, when you look at massing, you would think those sidewalls actually have the biggest impact when you look at the massing of the side of this building to the original, more diminutive historic structure. And maybe he could clarify, some of the measurements are not specific, but if you look at the heights of the 2 stories, they've increased by at least 1 foot. And so by changing the roof from what it was to this hip design, it appears that more of that wall is actually exposed or higher, which clearly works against. I mean, the goal is to see a less massive wall that's towering into our yard. I'm not so focused on the actual peak pinnacle, which is only probably a few feet wide at the maximum in the old roof design. So instead, these walls seem to be of larger mass.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, that's incorrect. The second floor was significantly reduced, and it was actually set back more than 5 feet than it was existing. So it should definitely be a much smaller presence.
And I would like to avoid it going back and forth. So
just read what the heights say, because you'll see in the old one it shows a 10-foot first floor and an 8-foot second floor of the wall. And if you look at the new one, you'll see a 10-foot first floor and a 9-foot second floor. So you can put them side by side and appreciate our frustration.
I think with that, I am going to close the public comment unless anyone else would like to speak, and invite commissioner deliberation and any questions to staff at this time. I'll start. Commissioner Sweeney, I liked your comment about the gutters. Any suggestions that you have towards that end? We can just kind of start.
I know it's been an issue, and although it's in the point in general drainage, it doesn't specify gutters. And so if that given that the current roof line does fall right onto the neighbor's, Mr. Fisher's yard, there's no question that in this, and I'm not seeing that those are exactly specified in the plans, that there would be a runner. So that's one thing. And then I think in kind of my mind's eye, what this really boils down to is are the commissioners going to approve a two-story or not, which is a material difference to the applicant and the neighbor. So I think that's everything else seems to be mitigated and working towards kind of common ground, but that's kind of the crux of the matter, really.
I'm thinking on the gutter issue too. I think I may have mentioned it last time. I was just wondering if there could have been, if there was going to be consideration of rain harvesting with the gutter arrangement, which would solve the problem of runoff even more than just putting the gutters and the drains there. So I think that was mentioned last time. I just want to reiterate that. That's a concern of mine. I'm still thinking that numbers 4 and 14 and 6, when they're talking about for the design review findings, that it's compatible with future construction both on and off the site. The direction we've been going on in here has been to have smaller buildings on lots, not to have the larger houses on lots. So in terms of that, it's just been reduced. I really appreciate all the changes that were made. Very responsive response to, I really appreciate that. However, that particular finding I find hard to come to terms with. And all of the findings that refer to the historical aspect of the house, obviously, it's much, much larger than would have been appropriate at this time. So, any addition would be, you'd have to ask yourself, is that in keeping with the historical character? And this seems like it's bigger than the whole house, and really to keep in character, it seems to me it would need to be a small structure. So that part bothers me. And also, I was sorry not to be able to see, I'm glad you brought that up, Commissioner Heil, not to be able to see a rendering of what it would look like with one story, with the roof line going the same way over the addition as it is on the original house. And I would have liked to have seen what that looks like, because with this, it's only 3 feet, I think. Commissioner Sweeney said there's a 3-foot difference between the new roof and the old roof. I think you clarified that in the beginning of our discussion. It looks in the picture, it really looks looming, though. It still looks looming to me. And I don't know. It's hard for me to imagine. I can put my finger across it. It just, if it were the same height and not a second story, I'd really like to see what that looks like, because I think it would be more in keeping with the historical character of the house, and less looming and less massive for that piece of property. So, a couple of ideas.
And, if I could just add a point, as the Commission's aware, the Commission on Mr. Fisher's house approved an addition that was a 2-story addition on a historical house. This is similar, but a big difference between the two is Mr. Fisher's lot is significantly larger. This lot is, I think, roughly half the size. So I think if the Commission is looking at this question of, in 1-story and 2-story, and I think Commissioner Sweeney hit the nail on the head. That's sort of the basic underlying issue that I think would be important for the Commission to make that finding about to distinguish it between the Fisher's house and the difference in the lot size.
Okay, thank you for pointing that out, Victor. Grace?
Remembered. I guess I'd like to see a rendering with a single story. I don't know. Maybe you drop if you really want 2 stories. Maybe you drop you go down rather than up. I know we used to have houses that we did that with, that we stepped down into. I would like to see, I would, on that size lot, I'd like to see a single-story house. Excuse me, I do appreciate the work that he's gone to. I think he's done a lot of work, and I think he's done some real nice things with it. But I really think that that's a very small lot, and I would prefer to see a one-story house.
Yeah, from my perspective, I think the improvements are actually closer to the finish line than we began at, much closer. I mean, at this point, but the historical vernacular, you know, the gable to the hip roof, it seemed aesthetically to fix the situation that we were having before, but there was something that still just didn't appear to be, you know, quite, you know, didn't quite family, and I thought it was this large second two-story window. And in disclosure, I did meet with the applicant on site, and I think that that's where a stairwell is. So that's a, you know, it's a place that makes sense to have that large two-story window, but it gives the appearance of that second story being enormous. I mean, being quite tall, and that's why we have the difference is that extra foot in that second story when you switch the roof material. So, you know, for me, it's really about design review finding number 3, which is the relationship of the design to the site. I think this design in a vacuum makes a lot of sense and is attractive and aesthetically pleasing. Since the siding went to horizontal, the stem wall came up with a stone stem wall. That makes all the difference in the world. You can see them side by side, and just, you know, the existing to what's proposed now, it's just much better than it was. I'm with Commissioner Kistner, where it would be interesting to look at doing a half-story English basement, you know, if you absolutely must have 2 stories, and continuing a solid roof line from the historic structure to the addition. Clearly, we know from the existing structure, because I walked it, that second, the current existing addition that's there has this, you know, beautiful, well, you know, you're kind of continuing the stonework from the original house where you go up the porch and into the house, and then you step back down on your way back out because you're continuing that same one story. But it might be that they could split the levels in the back in the addition, and it would make for a creative solution to the idea of getting 2 guest bedrooms in the back of the house without having this looming structure. I think, you know, again, it's the relationship of the design to the site and the massing of that wall that's on the northern elevation that I think is difficult for me to approve at this point.
Thank you, Commissioner Howell.
The double hung windows are actually a huge upgrade. If you look as well, I'm sorry,
No,
not to interrupt.
No worries.
I mean, I think that's absolutely a quantum leap, because when you looked at the existing, again, those single hung windows look like a different house, like we said the first time, and now it families much more, more cohesively.
Commissioner Sweeney, did you want to say something?
No, I agree. I think that all of the design changes are consistent, and I believe that historically, and in support of the report that was submitted as well, that the historic integrity is maintained, but it is about size. And I think from everything that we've also heard in public comment, as well as letters submitted from the community, that really was what it boils down to. And without coming up with another way to make 2 stories work without going down or do other things, it's inconsistent with the size of the lot.
Thank you. I am in agreement with my fellow commissioners on this. I do think that this project is very interesting. There are some serious limitations because of the historical nature of the existing building and the transition to an addition. I think that I would like to see what it looks like as a 2-story but drop down. I think that that's something that I agree with Commissioner Howell. I think that stairwell window is looming and does seem a little invasive to privacy, even though it's a stairwell window. It's no one's really going to be peering out of it. I just think that considering it as a 2-story, and with the site, again, agreeing with Commissioner Howell, the relationship to the design of the site, it's a little bit too big of a massing on it, and I think that is something that we really need to be careful of. And it's considering that there are also, we've heard comments that neighbors are concerned and feel that they haven't been heard. I think that it is in our best interest to continue this to the next meeting and to see that rendering of a drop down, so it's a more of a single story look while maintaining that second story. Not yet. I will, but yes, but not quite. I also just wanted to commend you on the changes that you did make. I really do appreciate that setback that you created with the second story. It definitely, it lessened the massing to the side that was there, but that massing still does exist, and it is still a concern. Again, I echo Commissioner Hiles' comments on the double hung windows and the siding and the continuation of the rock foundation and the change of the roof. It's seems less of two different buildings now. It seems a little bit more something that you would see on the East Coast of additions that they made 100 years ago to when they made additions back then. I would like to see this continued. I'm going to invite you back up to hear your comment on that, just because I think that we're still just not quite comfortable, and I think that right now it's important for us to be comfortable with projects that we approve, and I don't think that any of us wants to deny this project. I just think that we want to approve the right project. And if you would like to come up and let me know if continuing it is a huge issue, or is it something that we can thankfully please work with. And I apologize for all the continuances. We just want to get this right.
Yeah, we're obviously trying to, build a nice project, but it also has to be feasible. So if you continue it, we'll explore options. If anyone listening at home wants to buy a brick building, give me a call. We'll obviously explore your suggestions, but we may find that it's just not feasible. So,
Yeah, and I am so sorry. I mean, it's just one of those things where you're in this rock and a hard spot, because you have to still maintain the historical nature of the building that's presently there.
Yeah, so I hope you guys really like the existing building. So it might stay that way for a while. If you continue, we'll explore the options and see if we find something that works. So
thank you very much for your patience and understanding. Can I get a motion to continue this?
I move that we continue agenda item 9.1 to our next regularly scheduled meet, or February 17th. Is that right? Because we have to renotice. Okay, and then we'd like to read into the record as well at this time that, that will be the date certain that we will hear this again. And for Mr. Bartlett and Mr.
Fisher.
No, Mr. Hawkins, I'd love for them to come and actually be here and present if they can, so we can hear directly from them in real live time and participate.
I second.
I also would like to add that those were two correspondence that we received. I didn't read those in, but we did receive letters from Mr. Hawkins and Bartlett and Mr. Fisher, who is present on this issue. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Monette,
Yes.
Kistner,
Yes.
Sweeney,
Yes.
Heil,
Yes.
Chairperson Parker.
Yes. All right. Moving on to 9.2, this is PL 14-053, a variance and design review. It's brought to us by Joel Gott, and if we could have a staff report.
Absolutely. As noted in the staff report, in 2004, the Planning Commission approved a 352 square foot restroom facility that was contingent on GOTS connecting to the city's sewer system, which wasn't possible until 2013 when necessary extensions were completed, by which time the previous approvals had long since expired. As currently proposed, the applicant would like to construct approximately 500 square foot restroom addition to the existing 708 square foot walk-up eatery. The addition will include separate ADA-compliant restrooms for employees and restaurant patrons. The new restroom facility is proposed in order to address restroom access and availability issues. Currently, a mobile restroom trailer has been placed in the parking lot in order to accommodate restroom needs. No other changes to the existing restaurant are proposed. All materials used on the addition will match the form and color of the materials used on the existing restaurant. Staff believes the proposed facility meets the design review criteria relative to placement, materials, and architectural theme. While the use is considered legal nonconforming, the new facility brings the use into compliance with code in relation to restroom facilities. Staff finds the proposed project is consistent with the intended uses of the site and concludes that variance and design review findings can be made to allow the expansion of the footprint to accommodate the new facility. Be happy to answer any questions you may have at this time.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions for staff at this time?
Yes, is it the opinion of staff that the variance does not increase the nonconformity of this structure? I mean, I heard you say that it brings it into compliance with our codes.
As far as the restroom facility is concerned, the reason why the variance is required is because it is expanding the footprint of the use, which is why we're getting the variance.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Just seems like a really good idea to me.
Well, before we get into that, if we could open up public comment and hear from the applicant, or anyone who would like to speak to this. Seeing none, I will close the public comment and open up commissioner deliberations. Would anyone like to tee off?
I'd like to go first.
All right. Commissioner Heil.
This could be the single most important project we approve in this entire year.
I thought that was Cook Tavern.
Cook Tavern was last year. So anyway, I'm in full support of this project, and as one citizen told me today, it's about time.
I totally agree.
Well, we know how Bobby feels.
Well, I was concerned initially about the water and the wastewater, but I spoke with staff today, and there are no issues there. So that would be the only thing that would matter. But otherwise, it's like, how have they been managing? That's what I want to know. The lines must have been really long.
Commissioner Sweeney?
All for it. Agreed.
Same. I would, if there's no other comments, I'd like to have a motion.
I move that we determine that the project is exempt from the requirements of CEQA pursuant to Section 15303 Class 3C, which exempts the construction and location of limited numbers of new small structures, including restaurants less than 2,500 square feet. I move that we accept the required findings and approve a variance to zoning ordinance Section 17.140.020B to allow the expansion and operation of a non-conforming use, and I move that we accept the required findings and approve the request for design review approval to construct a new restroom facility at 933 Main Street.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Commissioner Sweeney,
Yes.
Heil,
Yes.
Chairperson Parker,
Yes.
Commissioners Kistner,
Yes.
and Monette.
Yes.
All right. Thank you very much. If only all applications could be that easy. Okay, so moving on to 9.3, this is a design review, and I have been notified that Commissioner Sweeney needs to recuse herself out of a location. This is for 1426 Kearney Street. The applicant is Mary Wilson. If we could get a staff report.
Should I wait for Matt?
Oh, yeah, sorry. Usually people ask permission. No, she has to recuse herself. We're going to take a little recess. Oh, wait, here comes Commissioner Heil.
Sorry about that.
Now may we get a staff report?
Absolutely. This is for 1426 Kearney Street. The existing 7,031 square foot parcel is currently developed with a 1,525 square foot, 3-bedroom, 2-bath, single family residence with a 200 square foot shed in the backyard. The applicant is seeking design review approval to remodel and update the existing residence and shed. This will involve a reconfiguration of the existing single-story structure to add approximately 51 square feet while going from a 3-bed, 2-bath to a 2-bedroom, 2-bath. The interior will be redesigned to modernize the kitchen and dining area. The remodel also includes the addition of a 240 square foot carport with enclosed storage. The 200 square foot shed in the backyard is in poor condition and will be upgraded by adding approximately 60 square feet and changing the design to more closely match the main residence. As far as the floor area ratio is concerned, the project will consist of 1,756 square feet for a FAR of 0.25, which is well below the maximum allowed on the site. The existing home was constructed in 1913 and is listed on City of St. Helena's 1978 Historic Resource Inventory. The applicant voluntarily submitted the project to Napa County Landmarks for review and comment, and subsequently modified the project based on their comments. Conditions of approval have been added to ensure that those requested changes are made. Staff finds that the proposed configuration of the site, the overall design elements, and proposed materials and finishes are in character with the neighborhood and the community, and the proposed changes will not substantially affect the historic nature of the home. Because of this, staff believes that design review findings can be made to support the project. I'd be happy to answer any questions you have at this time.
Thank you. Are there any questions for staff at this time? All right. I'd like to open up the public comment. Would anyone like to comment? Seeing none, I will close the public comment and invite Commissioner deliberation. Would anyone like to speak on this project?
I think it's a fine project, but I was just wanting to make sure that that the new windows, because I know there are restrictions on them, but that they be, I'm pretty sure they would be anyway, but just in case, that they be double pane windows, that they not be really historic windows in the sense that they aren't energy efficient. And that's probably part of the building. I mean, that would probably come up anyway, but I just wanted to make sure that would happen. Because I read something about them, that the windows had to be of a certain kind, so.
Okay.
In order to be considered part of the historical.
So you want them to?
They can be the kind, they can be sash, however, but they need to, I think they should be double pane. I don't think that that aspect of the historic qualities of a structure should be maintained.
I don't see a problem with that. Anyone else? Okay.
No, I mean, you're arguing for efficiency's sake, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Does anyone else have any comments on the project?
I have one. In the design review on number 11, I would like to include the front door shall be a single width door with skylights and a transom over the door and side lights. And I think that was agreed upon in Miss Ogden's letter, or her application.
Where are you getting that?
Yep, that's included in the resolution as number 11.
Okay.
That's right.
Yep.
No, I just said a transom over the door, and the letter indicates, and her proposal indicates, and side lights. So you've got a door and two side lights, and the transom should go over both.
Yeah, it just says side lights before the door on 11.
Mm-hmm.
It says door with side lights and a transom over the door, as opposed to after it. Am I missing some?
Right, so in a transom over the door and side lights.
That's what I'd like to see, yes.
Or over the doorway. Well, no, but it has to include, do I understand that correctly? I'm sure that's what the architect intends to do.
That's right.
And means to say. So do we understand, Aaron?
Nope.
Okay, so
the front door shall be a single width door with side lights and a transom over the door.
And side lights.
And side lights.
You see what I'm saying?
You mean both the door and the transom will have side lights?
Okay.
Should have one over the two.
Just over
That's correct.
Okay.
One over the two. Or over the three.
Should we draw a picture?
I got it. I can add that.
Okay.
Great catch.
Thank you.
Okay.
Commish.
Commissioner Howell, do you have any comments?
No, I'm in full support of the project. I will say I'm in support. Well, I like to see a project with the .25 FAR. I think
I do
that's
too. Great.
I think that shows responsiveness to the neighborhood, to the character, to the just to what we've been talking about.
To the town period.
To the town period. We don't have people arguing or writing us letters on this application. I think that's because it was well thought out and thought through. And I think that one thing I would say though is that I think our code with the exemptions, so to speak, whether you get a credit for this and a credit for that, is a little misleading and misconstruing. So not on this application, but I think going forward as we look to revise our floor area ratio factors, we probably want to look at those too, just because what's being, for a FAR, it's perfectly said in the staff report. Therefore, for FAR purposes, the project will consist of a 1756 square foot house. But what we're actually talking about is a larger house than that. And I think it's just misleading and a little bit, somewhat disingenuous for us to kind of have these different calculations. It's really a 2,000 square foot house, but for FAR purposes, it's 1756. So
Yeah, I'd love to hear more on people's feelings on the exemptions just overall. I think that they might have worn out their welcome. I also am in full support of this project. I love it when people take historical houses and keep the historic nature, but still modernize them so that they're efficient for the times that we're in, and then also refurbish them so that they can continue on. So yeah, I'm in full support of the project.
Can I ask a question of the applicant?
Yes.
I'm just curious, did you talk to any neighbors in the process?
And if in your answer, could you come up to the microphone so the people at home can hear?
I'm Polly Ogden, and I'm the designer. We spoke to the neighbors, the home that was next to it, but those people have now since sold, so did not speak to the new owners, since actually we were already in the process, I think, by the time they came in. Have spoken to a couple other people on Kearney Street. Everybody was thrilled, to be honest, because the house is in pretty bad shape. So.
And there is kind of a unique thing with that property. The buildings to the right of it are opposites.
Yeah, no, I actually have been in, was friends with someone in high school who lived in that house, so I've been in that house many times.
So you know,
I know the layout, and it's kind of tight.
Yes, it is, and it's all cut up and
Yeah.
been added onto in weird ways and stuff. So this will bring it all together and be a really lovely residence.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Polly.
Sure. Thank you.
If I could have a motion, unless anyone else has anything else.
I
to
move
say.
that we've determined that the project is exempt from the requirements of CEQA pursuant to Section 15301, Class 1, which exempts the minor alterations of private structures, and we accept the findings and approve design review for the proposed remodel and expansion for the resident located at 1426 Kearney Street.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Commissioner Heil,
Yes.
Chairperson Parker,
Yes.
Commissioners Monette,
Yes.
Kistner.
Yes.
Thank you very much. Moving on, we have a public hearing and recommendations.
Should we get Tracy?
Oh, yes. Can we go get Tracy? Gosh, I'm really bad at this. I'm so used to not having someone there. Okay, moving on to public hearings and recommendations to City Council. We have none, referrals, none, reports by staff and the Planning Commission, none. But before I join the meeting, I would like to, on the record, request that we get a housing report for the building permits that were issued in 2014, the numbers as they compare to RENA. I think it would be really nice to see what those numbers are. I also did have the request in to Aaron prior to this, just before this meeting, that I would like to see remodels and the square footage that was added on to those remodels. I think that that is important in St. Helena, considering I think that there might not be a lot of new buildings, but I think that there are quite a few remodels.
I would also, I had asked last time, I think we had all agreed, that we would have a review of the Hunter Project again. And if we could have that on I noticed it wasn't on this agenda, but if that could be on the next agenda. Sure. And also, I would like to know, I'd like to ask the rest of the commission, my understanding is that one thing on our wish list that we sent to the city council, our goals, was to look at FAR and send them a recommendation. I'm wondering when we can get that on. I think we should get that on the agenda.
And that was actually my next question for agenda forecast is somehow missing from my.
We're not having it anymore, I don't think. But
we're not doing agenda forecast anymore. Oh.
But I suppose.
Good to know.
But we will have.
They're trying to keep us out of trouble.
Yeah, I understand. Well, I would love to see at the next meeting if we could start that. I mean, I understand. I don't need I don't think we need the full big huge report. We just need to start somewhere. I think that we kind of get in trouble a lot of times where we want everything all at once, and sometimes just baby steps are the important way to go. And I just want to get the ball going.
Yeah, because it hasn't.
At least get a timeline of when we're
yeah,
going to do
a
it.
timeline of when we can do it. It would be helpful.
Okay.
And baby steps are better than no steps.
Exactly.
One thing which staff did promise just before the end of the year, and we'll be bringing, it's either going to be February 3rd or the 17th, but it kind of relates to the item the initial item that came up is talking about a standard in terms of submittal, in terms of drawings and the kinds of graphics the commission wants to see. Partly we've been hamstrung because the graphics component of this new audiovisual setup hasn't been working correctly. So, but we'll be sure that we have, once it is, for when projects come that have graphics, that we're able to put them up on the screen. So I think that just makes it a lot easier to hone in and discuss various issues. But anyway, we will be bringing that to this question about what the commission prefers in terms of submittal information concerning architectural and design issues.
Perfect. So we have homework. All right. And with that, I'd like to adjourn the meeting. Thank you very much.